All right then. And we're recording. What is the eighth version of this initial video? Yeah, it was every bit the learning experience that I expected it to be. I'm not complaining. I'm actually enjoying myself here quite a bit. I've got a brand new camera. I've got microphones, and I'm learning about the limitations of unpowered microphones right now. That was a fun limitation, which led me right back to Amazon to make another purchase. Um, but I'm enjoying myself, and I think this will be the final version that this proof of concept is going to require, and I'll put it up on YouTube as my very first video. And it's kind of funny. I'm watching the autofocus follow my head around on my camera, and it's a little distracting. But I'll have to get over that, I guess. Um, so aside from these technical things that I'm figuring out, I did want to talk about something local, related to Wyoming and politics, and that was directly related to the Campaign for Liberty Facebook invite that came out just a few days ago. And it was kind of troubling what I accidentally discovered about this invite, which is that it was shared by somebody who is evidently not libertarian, and also very evidently not a fan of religion. And this person that shared this video, or rather not a video, but shared this Facebook post, they were really strangely biased against it in a way that just seemed reflexive, like so many progressives are these days, which was strange because I would expect that of millennials, but not of the age that this particular person was. And the Campaign for Liberty post talked about the idea that it always seems like stuff in the news is leading us to believe that culture and society and the world are fast approaching this apocalypse, and that everything is going to be ending soon. And the idea was that what you should do is take a step back, find some perspective, maybe talk to God, and you'll realize that while things are certainly bad in very specific circumstances, like the Kavanaugh mess with the Senate and his confirmation, that was a bit of a mess. And there are other very specific messes. We're not quite at the point yet where civilization is coming up on midnight. And that particular thing reminded me of my own experience when I was in the Air Force, where at some point when I was a young airman, a sergeant said to me after I had griped about something, and he said, I know things seem bad, and I know things seem like you have to put in more work than you should need to get this to work right, because, various people in the background are resisting doing things properly. He said, but when I was your age, just a wee young airman like yourself, I thought the same thing. And my supervisors, when they were younger, thought the same thing. Everybody thinks that the crap is hitting the fan a little bit too hard, but it's never quite as bad as you think that it is. And so I was able to relate to this message from the Campaign for Liberty page. And I couldn't find anything bad about it. Not that I was looking, but let's say that nothing stood out as being terrible about this Campaign for Liberty message. And the guest speaker for this month is going to be a Pastor Powell. I believe his name was Powell, last name. And Pastor Powell it seems, is going to be talking to us about how religion, impacted the lives and traditions and decisions of people back in the days of our founding fathers here in America. And I'm like, wow, that sounds interesting. Especially since Western civilization is heavily influenced by Judeo-Christian religion and Judeo-Christian traditions, which, even atheists need to acknowledge, and a lot of atheists do acknowledge. It's like you don't have to believe in God to acknowledge and appreciate all of the things that Christianity has brought to our culture. No, but this particular person did not think so, evidently. And this particular person threw out some really baseless accusations of historical revisionism, which I thought was particularly interesting because the event has not happened. In fact, will not happen for another 4 days. So unless there's some clairvoyance and maybe some omniscience going on, I don't see where you're going to get any kind of charges of anything revolving around this particular presentation, just because it hasn't happened yet. I mean, maybe he's going to say that the devil walked the earth in the guise of General Washington, but until Thursday happens, nothing crazy has yet been said. Though you get the idea from the general, let's say, tone of this person's Facebook page that it wouldn't really matter what is said, then that they would be against it just because it is focused on religion. But it wasn't even this initial person's post that bothered me a whole lot, aside from the fact that it gave me a negative impression on them personally. But one of their Facebook followers responded, and it was another person that happens to live here in Wyoming. And this person mentioned that the Campaign for Liberty post frightened them. And and that set me back, because I was like, what is so frightening about this? The idea that a person should be able to take a step back and reframe an issue with some objectivity and try to do things that would help them to not panic over things they don't need panicking about. That's frightening. The idea that we might act like functioning, mature adults capable of objectivity and logic. That's frightening, I guess. You would get the idea that this person probably, and this is just me making judgments on them, but they would probably approve of these young college-age millennials with their panic attacks and their need for safe rooms. That's just the idea that I get. If you are against exercises that bring your perspective, then the only other thing that you could imagine is that the opposite would be something that is worthwhile and meaningful then, which is panicking and crying and just basically unmanning yourself over the issues that you find in life. But that's not even the worst thing about this particular person's response. It was their following line that they wrote, where they asked, who are the members of Campaign for Liberty? And the reason that bothered me, and it bothered me a lot, is because as I've been following just this progressive meltdown of the last few years, especially since Trump, ascended to the presidency, it's that everything is acceptable when applied to the political right. And that anyone whose views align with the right, or even anyone whose views don't perfectly align with progressive orthodoxy, and that's the orthodoxy of, say, intersectionality and postmodernist thought in general, is that you're an apostate and no longer needed to be treated like a human being. And since you no longer need to be treated like a human being, then you can be doxxed, which is have your personal information thrown out there for the world to see, with the following encouragement of call this person's place of work or their, the place that they go to school, and even go to their neighborhoods and call them out and try to get them fired from those jobs, try to get them kicked out from those schools, try to get their neighbors to shun them. And we just saw this happen with Senator Feinstein's, actually, it wasn't even hers. It was Sheila Jackson Lee's supposedly unpaid intern, even though this intern was being paid by a third party to be her unpaid intern, where this intern logged on to the government network, got the personal information of some Republican senators, and put that information up on their Wikipedia pages, like information like their addresses and their phone numbers. And when they were caught by another staffer, they attempted to coerce that staffer into maintaining silence by threatening to release the information of those senators' children. And you see this happening in other places too. You have that baker in Colorado. He was fined selling cakes to people whose lifestyles he did not agree with, but he did not want to, perform his art for specialized ordered cakes because he disagreed with it for religious reasons. And it wasn't enough for progressives to disagree with him. They had to take every measure that they could think of to ruin his life. And you see a lot of doxing everywhere. If we disagree with you, your information is going up on Twitter, and then we're going to get the Twitter mob to harass your place of employment until your employers have to go on Twitter themselves and say, we give up. We're tired of the harassment, so we fired this person. And so when I see this Facebook person who lives in Wyoming respond to a very reasonable post about maintaining objectivity in the face of frightening times, with the question of, who are these scary people that belong to this group? My first thought is they want to dox us. This person that lives in Wyoming wants to dox me and ruin my life. And that's just really disappointing for people that live in Wyoming. And I really don't feel like giving this lady the benefit of the doubt. And that leads me to another idea, which is that while I have not given, names of these people, although it's easy enough to figure out if you were to look at just who shared that Campaign for Liberty post, I'm still trying to figure out what the rules of engagement should be. Because the whole point in me making this blog and the wiki that's behind it is to turn residents into informed and enthusiastic voters. So naming and shaming the people that look like they want to behave like oppressive, bullying monsters might be the way to go just because we're fighting this culture war. And yet, while I respect that I have an opposition in this war, because when you're at war, you can't just put your head in the sand and pretend that the tanks aren't rolling up your streets. I want to fight this cultural battle in particular, and the war in general, while maintaining my dignity. I don't want to unman myself while trying to, keep my traditions that I value intact. So that's something I'm gonna have to talk to some of the people I respect about. One of whom is a neighbor and a lay pastor. Maybe I can get some comments on this video. Like, what do you think would be both effective and leave you able to maintain your dignity while fighting all these cultural battles that we're going to have to fight over the coming years and decades? And I think that's where I'm going to leave off on this. And it's my first video. I'm not quite sure right now. It looks like my screen says 17 minutes. So I guess that's good for a first video. I'm going to throw it up on YouTube on the Forests of Trees channel. And maybe get some views, maybe get some likes. If you do like it, please hit that like button, because YouTube has an algorithm that takes a look at everything that the viewers do with that video to determine whether YouTube is going to promote that video on everyone else's feeds. I guess is what you call it. As far as like their recommended video sections and whatnot. And so if you like it, hit that like button. Subscriptions are also very good, because it also tells YouTube that this is a channel that it might want to promote in other libertarian and conservatives feeds. And I definitely also appreciate any comments. I just would like to mention that this video itself is mostly just a proof of concept while I teach myself the mechanics of this particular camera and how to use Adobe Premiere Pro to do things like color correction so things don't look so flat, and syncing the audio up from the microphone on the camera with the microphone here, the lavalier lapel mic I've got on my shirt here. And in future videos, just to keep me from rambling so much, I will have an outline that I'll work off of, just to keep me a little bit more, on track. And I should probably look a little bit more at the camera. I know I keep staring off at the far wall here, just like I'm lost in thought. It was a bit of a trial and error on exactly how I should set this camera up initially, because it seemed like when I was facing one wall, then I would have shadows that were showing up behind me, and I thought that might have been distracting and just not a good presentation. So I had to do a little bit of experimenting with like the direction that my desk lamp was pointing, and even what wall I wanted to have as my background. And I do apologize for the green. It's I want to say it's a bad color. It actually looks nice if you're sitting in the room. Let's just say that it looks nice if you're in the room, and it matches the carpet and the ceiling, and it doesn't look as bad as it may end up looking on this screen. But we use what we have. I do not yet have any winning Powerball tickets that are going to let me build a studio of my own. And between the camera and the equipment and accessories that go with the camera, and the things that I've paid for on the web page, like licenses for like WordPress themes and the music that I'm about to pay for, so that I can, not violate anyone's copyright on the theme music that I want, and all the things like that. I've invested somewhere around 1,800 to 2 grand into this endeavor. So as time passes, I'll be able to do more investment, like buying a couple more chairs so that I can have a bit more of a, I guess, space appropriate for an interview with a guest. And yeah, I think that's about all I got tonight. I hope everyone likes this video, and it shall hopefully be the first of a good many.